And hi again, everybody, and welcome in. Dan Avone along with you as we get you ready for the Golden State Warriors to do battle with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they'll do it from the Twin Cities. The third time the two teams will square off this year. They have split the first two games of the series, with the T-Wolves taking that first contest and pretty much blowing out Golden State. And then it was the Warriors that were able to bounce back 2 days later. Something has to give tonight as the T-Wolves and the Warriors both come into tonight's contest with identical records at 14-12 on the season. Just a reminder, Warriors Live is presented by Xfinity. Stream sports from the best seat in the house with Xfinity. Bring on the good stuff. All right, well, the Warriors are looking to rebound, to say the least, after what happened to them last time out against the Memphis Grizzlies. An epic loss that has been well told. They lose it by 51 to Memphis in a game that saw Steph Curry, for the first time in his NBA career, not register a field goal. Draymond Green, in his 19 minutes, did not get a rebound, no assist, and no points for him. Now, we talked about this earlier today on Warriors this week. Is this something that we can read more into, of two players that are your quote-unquote stars and just happen to be the oldest players on the team and two of the oldest players, quite frankly, in the NBA as far as their activity? Draymond Green at 35 years of age. He'll turn 36 this NBA season. And then, of course, Steph Curry at age 36, and he'll be 37 in a couple of months. Relying on two players that not only are they older, but when you think about what has happened to this team as far as nobody else able to provide any sort of a scoring threat, especially from three-point territory, it makes it a lot easier as far as defenses to challenge one player and one player only, and that being Steph Curry. And we saw that with Memphis. Ja Morant was guarding Steph Curry, face guarding Steph Curry. That's what they do back when I was a kid in CYO or some of the grammar school leagues, when you take the best player and you just stare him in the face, get two guys and just don't leave them. You don't even care. You're turning your back on the rest of the action. You don't even care what the rest of the team is doing. And still, the Warriors were not able to take advantage of Golden State, as I mentioned, losing 144-93. The big question coming into tonight's contest is that just a one-off? Now, we see these sort of things in NBA basketball games, especially throughout the course of 82 games, and everybody is susceptible to a game like this. Let's face it. Even when the Warriors were at their very best and winning championships, although they would never lose to this degree, the Golden State Warriors would still have a game or two that was forgettable, where you would get quote-unquote blown out. Now, the differentiation between what a blowout is sort of depends on who it is that you're talking about. And I think that losing by 25 can be considered a blowout, certainly. Losing by 20 is a blowout. You could say the last time, or the first time the two teams met, Minnesota and the Warriors, that it was, Minnesota that was able to quote-unquote blow out the Golden State Warriors. But when you lose by 51 and you do it in the fashion that they did, is it more of a footnote? Is it something that you or I or Warrior Dub Nation should read more into? And that's the question that I think needs to be answered going forward. And the first opportunity, the first test will be tonight, once again, when they take on the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that has had their own difficulties. At 14-12, as I mentioned, they currently have the same record as that of the Golden State Warriors. Just quickly taking a look at the Western Conference as we go 1 through 10. The Oklahoma City Thunder, which lost the NBA Cup, at 22-5. That's the best mark in the West. And look, it's still very early, but I think all indications, at least at this juncture of the campaign, that all roads going to the NBA Finals in the West are going to have to go through OKC. That is the team to beat. They were the number one seed a year ago. The difference between last year and this year for OKC is that they're a year older. And you could see the maturity and the way they're playing. And SGA is a bona fide star. He was an MVP, strong MVP candidate a year ago. He's once again established himself as one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best players in the NBA, and they're doing all this without the services of Chet Holmgren. Hartenstein has made this team so much better when you think about their defensive presence and protecting the rim and having another big to go along with Chet Holmgren. Obviously, he's a guy that likes to play a little bit more out on the perimeter, but it's a good balance when you talk about their 5 position with Chet Holmgren and then Hartenstein complementing one another. The Memphis Grizzlies, the team, as I mentioned, that blew out the Golden State Warriors last time. There you go. There's that word again, blowout. They annihilated. They completely embarrassed the Warriors. How's that? At 19-9 is the Memphis Grizzly record. They have been on fire of late. And Memphis comes in as the 2 seed. The Houston Rockets, another team that has surged. 18-9 is the record for them. And then it's the Dallas Mavericks who come in at 17-10, and also a team over the last couple of weeks that has caught fire. I think that those 4 teams, and we, again, mentioned this on the Warriors live program earlier today, and I think those 4 teams maybe as the season goes along, look for them to sort of separate from the rest of the conference, and you're going to see the Mavs, the Rockets, and the Grizzlies and the Thunder vying for that top seed or challenging one another for the 2 or 3 or the 4 seed. But I think it's going to be sort of a battle amongst themselves. And then when you think about the Clippers, the Nuggets, as well as that of the Los Angeles Lakers and the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Suns, and the Warriors, now you're talking about a grouping that involves the Warriors, where the Warriors right now currently sitting as the 10th seed, but you look at it, the Warriors, the Suns, and the T-Wolves all slated at the same record at 14-12. The Lakers a half game better at 15-12. The Nuggets are 14-11. So you only have, it's a game and a half that's separating you from the 5th seed. So again, 5 through 10 right now, there's not a lot separating the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Lakers, the T-Wolves, the Suns, and the Warriors. However, don't get too encouraged, because I think that the problems that the Warriors have might be more dire than that of the previously mentioned teams, because the Golden State Warriors just simply have personnel issues. They just simply don't have the talent. They can't, and it's unbelievable to say in 2024, especially regarding a Golden State Warrior team, that they can't score a basketball. When you think back how this team changed the sport, and they were all about running up huge numbers, the Splash Brothers, and shooting threes and changing the game. And now we fast forward to where they're at in 2024, and it's a team that's completely anemic in that area and has a hard time of putting the ball in the hole. Whereas when you think about the Clippers, they could be, if ever there's a pretender, the Clippers, I don't know if you're buying James Harden and what it is that they're doing, it's him as being the facilitator. But the Nuggets, the Lakers, the T-Wolves, and the Suns, the Nuggets, that's a team that's having some internal issues. Jamal Murray hasn't been good, but Jamal Murray is still a very good basketball player, and we'll see whether or not, he hasn't been good since the extension. They haven't been good because of Aaron Gordon's availability or the lack thereof. Their bench has never been good. But the personnel, you got the Joker, who is still very much in the prime of his career. And the only reason, if he doesn't get the MVP this year, if the season were to end today, it's not even close. That is clearly the best player in the NBA. And it's just a matter of that old NBA fatigue is the only reason why he would not be the MVP. But their personnel with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon and all those guys are, that's legitimate. They're just 2 years removed from winning the NBA championship and winning it rather easily. They were clearly the best team in the NBA, certainly in that postseason. And I don't know that even though they're 14-11 and a half game better than the Golden State Warriors, when you think about the Warriors and their personnel and the personnel deficiency, you can't really just, you can't even go side by side and compare the two when you're thinking about the Warriors roster and that of the Nuggets. The Nuggets have stars. They have young players that are very much in their prime. Now, clearly been underwhelming and not playing up to potential, but when you compare and contrast to where it is that the Golden State Warriors are at, the Warriors are a team that just simply does not have the sort of horses like that of the Nuggets. Not only the Nuggets, but the team they're going to see tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The T-Wolves, they have Anthony Edwards, who's clearly a star in this league, and a guy in his early 20s. And say what you will about Rudy Gobert, but, he's a defensive presence. You know about Naz Reid coming off the bench, and, Randall has clearly been a star in this league. He came over the big trade. Dante DiVincenzo has had his problems getting on track out there in Minnesota. But, again, the personnel is young and it's proven. And it's just a matter of some internal discrepancies. The chemistry is clearly off with Minnesota from where they were a year ago. Now, I don't know if you put that on the trade of Slow-Mo, who will go up against his former team again tonight, but Karl Anthony Towns, a guy that they traded, and Karl Anthony Towns, by the way, he got some definite redemption the last time the two teams met, which was just the other night. Was it last night, I believe, the two teams played, or 2 nights ago? Karl Anthony Towns against the T-Wolves in his first game back at Minnesota, 32 points and 20 rebounds. So clearly a statement by Cat, but there's something amiss with this team. But the personnel is for real. It's just a matter of internally, that team getting on the same page. And, we saw early on when Karl Anthony Towns mentioned that he is, when it was the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, and he had talked about how, this is a team that needs to stop finger pointing, and I'm paraphrasing here, and that there was clearly, and he included himself in that. He berated his own team, called them out, although he did it as a leader, but did it with a smile on his face, and they responded by winning 7 in a row, but once again, they're in a funk. They just lost their last game. So, but again, it's more of the internal workings of the Minnesota Timberwolves. You don't look at that team and say, everybody can use some improvements physically, right? But you don't look at that team and just say, wow, they need a myriad of things. Shooters, they need somebody who can get to the rim. They need to get younger. All issues that the Warriors deal with on a game-to-game basis. And it's very different when you think about the issues that some of the other teams that are bunched with the Warriors currently, the Phoenix Suns. That's a star-laden team, but they're as good as Kevin Durant. When Kevin Durant's not there, they're very pedestrian. But, Bradley Beal's proven scorer in this league. For crying out loud, the Warriors are ready to give up everything to get him just a couple of years back. And then, Devin Booker is a star, and say what you will about Grayson Allen. He's a guy that led everybody a year ago in three-point shooting. So, again, they have proven quality stars. Meanwhile, the Golden State Warriors, they got Steph Curry. And I don't mean to say that tongue-in-cheek, but it's getting to the point where a guy, as I mentioned, soon to be 37 years of age, 2 bad knees, and everybody in the building, and especially the opponent. Watch Minnesota tonight. I don't know if they'll face guard him, and I don't know whoever it is that's going to be watching him is going to turn their back on the rest of the action and just saying, I don't care what's happening. You're the only guy that can score wearing a Golden State Warrior uniform. I'm not sure if it's going to be that blatant as what it is that Ja Morant did the other night for Memphis against the Golden State Warriors. But seriously, you don't even see that in high school. You see that at the middle school level. And the reason why they're able to get away with it is because before the game, they make this declaration that we don't think you have anybody on that roster or on that bench that can score with any regularity. And guess what? After a 51-point drubbing, they were right. And this is held true throughout the entire season, that when you play the Warriors, if you lock up Steph, you're going to win the contest. And that compounded with the fact that Steph is going to be 37 years of age and that his body's breaking down. And we talk about it a lot. We talked about it this morning, that is this guy still worthy of having number 1 status? That's a question to be discussed. I think on a really good team, he's a 1A. So with that being said, and you don't have any help, the Golden State Warriors clearly need to find somebody until they make a trade, if they're going to make a trade, that's in-house. And whether it's Dennis Schroeder, whether it's Buddy Hield getting back on track, or whether it's Jonathan Kuminga, the Golden State Warriors clearly have to find that other person, not named Steph Curry, that can score the basketball. All right, it is time for the injury report, brought to you by Boxer and Gerson, Northern California's premier workers' compensation law firm, helping injured workers get their lives back for over 40 years. For more info, visit boxerlaw.com. For the Golden State Warriors, Moses Moody, it's an upgrade because he's listed as questionable, but most likely will not play tonight, as Moody continues to be out and not available. They certainly could use him. He's not the answer. He wasn't going to make up the 51 points in that loss to Memphis, but he does provide you with an ability to potentially score from the outside, and another guy that can give you some offense with some interior play. And it's, I think it's it can only help the Golden State Warriors in getting somebody like that of Moses Moody back in uniform. Meanwhile, Draymond Green, also on the injury report, Draymond also listed as questionable for Saturday's, that being tonight's game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and that's due to that left ankle soreness. Meanwhile, for the T-Wolves, Luka Garza listed as questionable for tonight's game as he's got a left ankle sprain, and it is Joe Ingles that will not be available, the longtime veteran left-handed shooter from Australia. He's not going to be available to go tonight for the T-Wolves. So Minnesota pretty much at full strength. The Golden State Warriors could be without their best defender in Draymond Green. And, of course, Moses Moody, who has missed the last couple of games, may not be available for the Warriors tonight as well. When we talk about Draymond Green, Green was recently replaced in the starting lineup with one Jonathan Kuminga. And it looked as though the Warriors were ready to finally say, okay, we're taking the reins off, young man. You now are going to be a starter. You're going to get run. You're going to get an opportunity to play. And we're going to do that for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, we have to decide whether or not you're worthy of that extension. We have to find somebody that's going to score the basketball, and clearly you're one of the few guys that's equipped to do that in terms of getting your shot, getting to the rim, and either scoring or getting fouled. And so let's go. And so we thought what was supposed to be this sort of significant replacement in this adjustment in the starting lineup lasted about barely a week. And he's once again, at least, in the last time out against Memphis, he was coming off the bench. Now, again, I don't know whether that was done because of matchup issues with Zach Edey at 7'3" and 300 pounds, who, by the way, is a pleasant surprise in the NBA this year. Well, pleasant, I guess, if you're a Memphis fan. But I was a big fan of Zach Edey going back to his days in Purdue last year, the Big Maple, the Canadian. But a lot of people didn't think because he played exclusively like 4 to 8 feet from the hoop that it wouldn't translate to the NBA game. But he has shown that he can actually get out, and he can, he's not a liability, and you don't have to take him off the floor. And he's just somebody that can get out. And he's perfect against the Warriors because, let's face it, you don't have to close on the Warriors. You don't have to chase anyone off the three-point line. You don't have to extend on anybody. What are you going to do? Run out at GP2? I don't mean to take a shot at GP2 or Brandon Pajemski, but if these are people that you're relying on to shoot the three and you're shooting it in the low 20s, I think it pretty much sums up where the Golden State Warriors are at. All right, a reminder, Warriors Live presented by Xfinity. At home or on the go, you'll get the fastest internet to all your devices. As the Warriors tonight taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves, but once again, just to revisit the Jonathan Kuminga conversation. Listen, Jonathan Kuminga, nobody played well that was wearing a Golden State Warrior uniform the other night. But the issue with Jonathan Kuminga as to whether or not he's going to start when it looked as though we turned the corner and that he was going to replace Draymond Green. Now, if the feeling is, well, listen, you can't afford to have Draymond Green come off the bench because you're going to be down by 20 points by the time he gets into the contest. He's your best defender and he sets the tone defensively. Understood. But you can play him alongside Draymond Green. He needs to get an opportunity to play and play a lot. And he also, I think, needs to start. And the reason why he needs to start is because the one thing we've seen with Jonathan Kuminga is that at age 22, he can still be very temperamental. And he's a guy that he wants to know that he's being rewarded, part of this coming out of the intros and being part of that starting unit. And if he misses his first two shots, he doesn't want to be looking over his shoulder. And he doesn't want to feel as though I just turned it over and once again I dribbled into traffic with my head down going 100 miles an hour and not letting the game slow down for me. And pretty much feeling as though, okay, well, my minutes are now limited because I know I'm going to get pulled any minute now. He needs to play with a sense of security and confidence that he can make his mistakes and play through his mistakes and be a star and be a guy who can score. It's not so much about providing trade value and getting an opportunity for him to do his stuff so that other teams can look at Jonathan Kuminga and determine whether or not that's a fit for them going forward. It's not as much about the Warriors needing to see him play so that they can make some financial decisions regarding his contract or his extension, whether they want to go down that road or not. But also in the here and now, you need someone who can score the basketball. That's it. There's no big mystery to this basketball team. It's who is going to put the ball in the hole. And Jonathan Kuminga, say what you will about him, and he's still slow to defensive rotations. There are times where, he will, as I mentioned, he goes so fast and he's not playing to the tempo of the game, and he creates turnovers, and there's still head scratches. He's been doing a lot of the same things he did his first 2 years in the league, and we're now in year 4. But he is someone that has the ability to create his own off the bounce. He's somebody that you can ISO, and he's somebody that can score. That's the reason why they got Dennis Schroeder. Another thing we talked about on Warriors Live is how he doesn't traditionally fit into the culture of what it is that the Golden State Warriors want to do. But the Warriors are desperate, and the Warriors need players like that as Schroeder. And why is Schroeder a need at this point? It's because he can score on his own. Schroeder, and he did this against Memphis, or at least he attempted to do this against Memphis, and he had a bad game as well. But he got to the rim. He didn't finish, but you can see that's what they want. That's what they're investing in. They need players who can score. This no longer is about the ball movement. It's not about that innate, intricate offense that's Steve Kerr, where guys just they know the spacing, they know how to backdoor cut, they know how to play Steve Kerr style of basketball. No. Now it's just simply give me raw scores. And I think that the Warriors clearly are in need of that, and it's one of the reasons why Dennis Schroeder is now a member of this basketball team as the Warriors once again take on a Minnesota Timberwolves team who have their own issues, as I've talked about. The chemistry has clearly been off with this team. It is not the same team defensively of a year ago, and Dante DiVincenzo, is as good as he was with the Knicks a year ago, has not been able to replicate that season in Minnesota. Naz Reid was a budding star in this league last season, and he has not been as good as he was last year. And I think anytime a team has Rudy Gobert, there is the possibility for some internal dissension. And I'm not sure that he and Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, are always on the same page. And I'm not necessarily sure how Randall has fit into things in terms of how they want to attack offensively. So a lot of moving pieces with this basketball team. But again, when you talk about personnel, I think that Minnesota has young, long, athletic players who are two-way players, and the Golden State Warriors simply do not. And I think at the end of the day, that when you're talking about trying to battle out with the Minnesotas, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Denver Nuggets of the world, these are teams that just simply have better personnel. The Houston Rockets, the Warriors just simply cannot match up because they're older and they don't have those sort of players. They got the Lindy Waters, the GP2s, the Brandon Pajemskis, and the Trace Jackson Davis, all good, but not to that, once again, not at that tier. All right, that'll do it for me. We're going to hand things over to Tim Roy. He'll take you right up until tip-off. It's the Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves, and all the action can be heard right here on 95.7 The Game. And, of course, I will see you afterwards with the Warriors post-game show. Enjoy the contest, everybody. So long.